Women live longer than men, maybe 5, 6 years or even more. But what gets lost is this. Those extra years are often lived alone and can be just as expensive, if not more so. Today we're facing that reality and sharing what you can do, you, your mom, your friends, to be prepared. Welcome to We Are Augusta.
Welcome to We Are Augusta, the Women's Financial Forum podcast presented by Trajan Wealth, where we empower fellow women with dignity, wisdom, and prosperity by turning real-life challenges into practical and wealth-building strategies to help you show up more powerfully in your financial life.
I am Arrin Simpson, joined by Blair Simmons, Jennifer Bennett, and Marty Bryant.
Happy to be here. And when we're talking about longevity truly is our life, how long we're going to live. So I think if our people can go to their doctor and ask their doctor, when are you going to die? It'll make our job so much easier to do.
Amen.
Right? Because we just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that picture look like when your spouse predeceases you? Have you planned for it? What do your finances look like? What's going to happen? Are you going to be okay?
CDC data tells us that women, on average, live longer than men. I remember one time hearing a statistic that either if a man predeceases a woman in a relationship, that the woman will either follow suit and pass within 2 years, or she's likely to live 10 plus years after he's gone. And so that really, in terms of just the grassroots observation of it all, I feel like that's pretty accurate. I don't know if you ladies have experienced or observed the same, but so it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So when it comes to planning, I like to always encourage my clients, we want to measure twice and cut once. So we want to prepare for that inevitability, even if that isn't how things shake out for you personally.
Add smaller lifetime income, increase medical costs and caregiving costs as we age, and you pretty much get a recipe for financial stress. And so unless you're aware of how to protect, increase, and stretch those dollars, let's talk strategy.
With this reality, what can women do?
Well, I think the most important thing is to start now, and when we're young and healthy and when we feel like death is very far away. Because this is the time to plan. And so it starts with awareness, understanding where we are as a household, understanding that if, I wake up in the morning and you're cold, that we have a plan in place. And that now I have time to grieve because we planned for this. I'm terribly sad. But in my sad moments, we have a plan. And so those are conversations of, being on the same page as a household, having your estate planning documents in place. Here at Trajan Wealth, we really emphasize the importance of that. Your medical health care directives, a power of attorney, at the very least a will, if not a trust, and knowing where to go to find those documents. If your spouse was the earning member of the household, then do we have a plan for that income continuation? Do we have a nest egg set aside for college education? Do we have a readjustment fund? Final expenses are typically anywhere, up to $25,000. Do we have funds set aside for that? Do we have life insurance in place? So there's no right or wrong answer to most of those questions, except for the estate planning side. There's definitely right answers there of what needs to be in place. But I think it starts with a discussion today while everything's bright and shiny, so that when that hour comes, one thing we're not thinking of is the financial stress of it all.
And when people are coming in, most of the time people are closer to retiring, or we start working with people that are already retired. For those who military, we still see pensions coming in through the military. And there are some companies or people that are a bit older now that have access to pensions just because they've been in their job for so long. This is when the planning really needs to start, because the way you take your pension benefit, we want to make sure that there is not going to be a loss of income for the surviving spouse. Or when somebody comes in and they've already taken their pension, how can we do pension replacement? How do we fix a decision that may or may not have been in your best interests? There's something called pension maximization, and that's where you take a single life pension and we back it up with life insurance policy. Because when your spouse dies, you are going to suffer, but you want them to suffer on the good side of town, right? When are we going to take Social Security? What we do know is when somebody dies, the lowest Social Security benefit goes away. How do we make up for that loss in income? So it's the planning that happens now. You can't plan when the event happens. We're done. We're smoked. We can do something. We'll figure something out, but it might not be exactly what you want or what you need at that point in time. Long-term care insurance, a hybrid policy, just so many decisions that need to be made throughout your financial world as you're moving through your accumulation into distribution, that if we start now, we can solve for those. So like Blair said, you don't have to focus up on, do I have enough? Can I make it? Because we already have that in place.
Yeah. Let me interject. I appreciate that viewpoint so much. And I think there's so many layers to what each of you has said, right? There's so much that it even sounds overwhelming. You go, where's my checklist? Just give me a simple checklist. And it's not that simple. It brings to mind this client that I've been working with for a while now. Young widower, she's in her early 50s, and her husband had the best of intentions and refinanced their house, but it was only refinanced in his name. And when he passed from a rare cancer, she literally had the estate team by his side to create, a trust that would allow her to control it as well. Best of intentions. So there's not a malicious intent, but gosh, we need to make sure that checklist, that figurative checklist, is controlled and help you with that process. Because in reality, if we don't, then you're going to be grieving and financially stressed. And I can't think of many worse things than that.
What you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
And I love that example because the company that you're refinancing that mortgage through is not thinking of the survivor.
Exactly.
They're thinking of that refinance.
Yeah.
And so I love that you brought that up.
Now, I have a scenario where my clients did everything right. We did the planning. We did it all right. Long-term care insurance was in place. This couple had been married for over 60 years. The husband ended up in long-term care, and we had the long-term care policy in place. Well, he was getting ready to outlive the long-term care policy. And when we talk about layers, there's also layers now. Obviously, the IRS could be in our pockets, and Medicaid. So Medicaid is at the state level. Medicare is at the federal level, right? So his long-term care benefit was getting close to running out. And the wife said, well, I'm going to be fine because my inheritance, and she had inherited a large sum of money, and together, collectively, they didn't have a lot of money. She inherited a large sum of money, kept it separate, out of the marital assets, and she said, so even if he continues to live, then Medicaid will kick in. And I said, it's not how it works. So normally, typically, inherited assets are not subject to community property laws, number one. Number two, when you are in a Medicaid situation, Medicaid, the state does not care where those assets came from, whose or whose.
Yeah, that's an amazing example.
Isn't that crazy?
It's a heartbreaking situation.
Very heartbreaking. Like they went to Disney for their anniversary, and I knew that they were having their anniversary supper at Pirates of the Caribbean in that restaurant. So I called the restaurant and I paid ahead.
Yes.
And they knew that it was a huge anniversary, and they had this huge celebration. And then 4 or 5 months later, he's in long-term care. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very different situation to plan for, too, depending on, kind of, as you implied, Blair, the age at which the first to die spouse goes. If you're in a phase in life where you're in accumulation or early distribution as opposed to getting closer to what you may expect to be end of life, that's a very different situation than if the first to die is already, 75 plus or already retired into retirement. It's very different if you still have small children at home that you want to plan for, because the reality is if the first to die goes when the couple is still relatively young, then the surviving spouse has a lot of room for potential pitfalls to sneak in and completely derail whatever they were working to build prior to that time. And I've seen that happen as well. And it's hard because grief is a very powerful emotion, and it's not something that you get over quickly at all. Your life will never be the same again if you lose a spouse. So it's important to think about some of those things. And nothing's perfect, so no amount of planning can really prepare you for how your life changes after your partner's gone. But there's some important things that we can do to help really ease that pain and that burden.
Or even if you're in a single income household, right? Only one spouse is working, and the other is raising the kids. And I know you've all have seen this. They come in, life insurance. Well, no, I don't have life insurance on my wife because or my husband because he's stay at home. And then you have to account for, well, if he or she passes away, how much income do you need? Because there is a loss there. You need to have income. Now you have to pay for childcare. Maybe you have to pay for a housekeeper. You have to pay all of it.
That person still adds value to the home.
There's huge monetary value.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a simple life insurance policy can help cover that.
Yeah.
And all these things can feel really overwhelming to think about and wonder, do I have A, B, or C checked off? And you don't have to, you're not alone. These are conversations that we'll have. And it's the little things like making sure you have a TOD or a POD on your bank account. It's things you don't necessarily think about. I can't tell you, unfortunately, how many, more than I can count on my hands, spouses that were in great financial shape, but one spouse controlled the finances and that spouse happened to die and the other spouse can't even pay the bills because there wasn't a simple titling on the checking account, the bill paying account, and so they go through probate and a lot. And that type of stress, when you've never, when you're used to things being a certain way, and then adding that to now not having your best friend, for instance, it's, it's devastating for everyone affected.
One of my favorites is the ex-spouse is still on the 401k.
Ooh, that's ugly. Oh,
and
man.
The ex-spouse definitely is not going to give that up, nor, legally do they need to. So, so many things.
Yeah, and so often I feel we have these progress meetings, and maybe sometimes people say, I don't have anything to talk about.
Oh, yes,
Really?
Oh,
yes, you do.
Oh, yes, you do.
Oh, yes, you do.
How long is this going to be? I think we're good. No, I think there's some things that, what's changed? It's been 6 months, or it's been 12 months, or it's been longer, hopefully not. But what's changed, because like you said,
Yeah.
that can happen.
Mm-hmm. Talking through something as simple as a per capita or a per stirpes designation on the beneficiaries in the event that, God forbid, something happens to say, for example, one of their children. The event they have 3 children, God forbid one of those 3 children were to predecease the parents and they had children. Do you want that share to go to the siblings or to that child's descendants?
Yeah, define that a little bit more, Jen, if you don't mind.
The per stirpes designation would have, so per stirpes is Latin for by the branch. So but even though it's by the branch, I always think of it like the bloodline, right? So it goes to the bloodline. So that means in the event that the 3 children and one predeceases, that children's assets would go to their own children instead of being split between their siblings. So simple things like that. Those 2 children maybe, I had this happen actually with one of my clients a couple of years back, and they definitely wanted that per stirpes designation. Their child did predecease, and then the matriarch went, and then the money went to their children, and it helped them go through college too. Yeah.
But per capita, it would go to, so if the 3 siblings, one dies, it goes to the other 2.
Yep.
It does not go down into that bloodline.
Yeah.
Important.
Thank you, Marty. Yeah.
Important. Nowadays, women are delaying marriage or maybe not even getting married at all. What recommendations do we have for those women?
So while they're working, and we'll just say single woman, not necessarily single mom. In single mom, it might kind of fit into the same scenario. Single women, make sure that if your company offers long-term care and short-term benefits, not long-term care, but disability, short-term disability, long-term disability, buy it. Buy as much as you can. And every time that they can double it, double it. It's pennies on the dollar. Now, if you are paying for it out of pocket, if you're paying that bill, it's tax-free to you. So if you go in, you need that short-term or long-term disability benefit, you've paid for it out of pocket, the premiums, it's tax-free, okay? Number two, obviously, if the company's paying for it, it's going to be taxable too. But now you have some coverage because you don't have that second income to rely on. So now you have yourself covered. It seems strange to say, but life insurance, you can do the company life insurance. If you don't have a beneficiary, might not make too much sense. Still have your trust in place. It's more important for a single person to have a trust. Simply because you know you have your medical directives taken care of, your financial power of attorney, medical power of attorney. If you are in a coma, you're alive, but you're in a coma, and you don't have that financial power of attorney, nobody can access your 401k money. They can't access your regular money either to help pay your bills and take care of you. So you want to make sure that you have those directives. If you don't have an actual person, then there are trust companies that you can name. There are companies that specifically handle the distribution of assets out of a trust. So you can do Zia Trust is one that I like to use. Make sure you have burial insurance. Burial insurance is so easy to get. Go to a funeral home and say, hey, I need some burial insurance. Funeral homes are who sell that. You can get like a $10,000 benefit for pennies on, just little money, like $15 a month, if even that. So there are things that you can do. And again, we already kind of touched on this, have a POD, a pay on death, a transfer on death. If you own a house, recommend a trust, or you can do just a simple beneficiary deed on the house so that there's a beneficiary waiting to get the house. It's a little different for single people because we don't have somebody to rely on, right?
Right, but I would also and I would challenge single people. You know, your circumstance may change, and so not necessarily a relationship, but other people in your life that some form of family, whatever. The point is, think of yourself 10, 15, 20, 25 years down the road, and do that planning now, because you're manifesting that to become true. So if you are successful in creating the life that you're dreaming of, plan for that life now. And so something like buying life insurance, and it's just an easy topic in your 20s, like nobody's thinking to buy life insurance in their 20s. But most of us can no longer buy life insurance in our 50s. You have to be insurable. So plan for your future self.
And I would say, depending on the financial life stage that you're in, there are different tools. Mm-hmm. So when you do the planning, we've mentioned life insurance and other products, but the person that you meet with and that you trust that is making the plan specifically for your needs today and in the future can look at longevity and inflation risk and making sure that liquidity is there, but also creating looking at Social Security, but also adding in long-term guaranteed income through other options as well. So be open-minded, be available to have those discussions. To
educate
plan.
yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, don't think because you're single
Ask the questions.
that it doesn't matter.
Right.
All the planning is still relevant.
Right. I don't want to be in a state-run Medicaid facility.
Girl, we won't let you. We got you.
Yeah.
Where do you want to?
You heard it here. They've got me. They've got me.
Okay, wait. They pointed at me. I got you.
All right. Okay. She's going to pluck my chin hairs. And
well, you better relieve
care
her.
of all that. Good.
Too far, Blair. Too far.
The other side of that too is that, like, when I have worked with folks, I had 20 clients die. No, sorry, I had 12 clients die.
You sound like the problem.
No, I had
How many denominators,
12. No, I had 12 clients die in 2020.
Oh my gosh.
One from COVID. That was just cancer. It was different things, and 12 clients in 1 year, and in the events where they did have their ducks in a row, it was just a grieving process for the spouse. And that was the main thing. Because when you're in that situation, you don't want to have to worry about money. I think one of you ladies mentioned that just a few minutes ago. That way you can just naturally go through that grieving process, have a support system around you. And especially for single folks, you don't need us to tell you that having that support system is good for while you're living too. It's good to get out and do what you want to do and have different connections with different people, and someone's going to be sad when you're gone. A lot of people are going to be really sad when you're gone.
My daughter better be sad.
Yeah.
She'll be happy that Aaron's taking over, but I'm sure she'll be sad that I'm gone.
We want to be able to celebrate you without having to worry about doing what we're not sure you would want to be done.
I've got a trust in place already.
But no, we're not talking about money. But just making sure that we're honoring your wishes. If you've never had that conversation with anyone, how can your loved ones, even if it's not your partner or your spouse, how can your loved ones honor your wishes if you've never had that conversation with anybody?
And speaking of honoring wishes, grim topic, but there is such thing as, I do not resuscitate orders. You need to know their wishes, because the gravity of that falling on a spouse or a child and them having to make that decision on your behalf, they may carry that guilt for the rest of their lives because you didn't have that conversation.
Or you didn't have the living will.
Yeah.
That's your medical directives.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just want to take a quick moment to say thank you for covering this topic, and thank you, listeners, for staying present with us while we discuss something that's pretty heavy but important. And we hope that through this topic and the load that it carries, you will then give yourself that gift of when something does happen, you can grieve and focus on grieving alone and not worry about the finances. We'll be right back.
Okay. Welcome back to the show. Jen, when did you realize that planning for longevity is a non-negotiable?
Well, I've worked with many clients over the years, but one particular relationship comes to mind. I had a lady client who her husband had passed close to the beginning of their retirement, and she went on to live into her 90s. So no one really knows. I mean, when you're young and you're doing your planning, you just don't know how life is going to turn out for you in your sunset years. So it's not an option. You have to plan for that what if of living longer. And the particular client I'm thinking of, she had no health issues at all until she did. And in her mid-80s, she developed her own health issues. So we need to plan for all of those what ifs. Mm-hmm. I've heard people say that crazy things, like they'll just jump off a bridge if that happens to them.
That's not reality.
They're not going to do that.
You're not going to get on the iceberg and float out into the ocean. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So you do have to do some kind of planning. And failure not planning is also kind of planning, right? Because you're not actually planning for anything.
If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Plan to fail, exactly. So you can't just bury your head in the sand and pretend like you're not going to retire or you're not going to become old.
What about just taking time to plan now and just do the small steps? Invest, contribute to your 401k, use the power of compound interest. Right. And Marty, if you don't mind, let me throw that back over to you. Mm-hmm. Can you explain to our audience who might not know what really the power of compound interest is?
Yeah, absolutely. So two different types of interest: simple interest and compounding interest. So when we use the term simple interest, I want you to think like you went out, you bought a CD, and it's going to pay you. We now call those certificates of disappointment because they're really not going to pay you anything.
Indeed.
Right. But so let's say it's going to pay you 4%. And it's just going to be 4% on that initial deposit that you make. So if you put in $10,000, it's going to pay you 4% on $10,000 every single year. Compounding interest is interest that is going to pay you more interest on that interest that it's earned. So, or now let's correlate it to an investment in the stock market. Compounding returns. So if you put $10,000 into a stock, as the stock's going up, it's going to fluctuate, but it's going to be stacking on top of what you have earned, right? So now you're going to have compounding earnings. So that's the power. And you might have heard the saying, the power of compounding. You want that compounding interest, because over time, it's going to serve you far greater than just, well, I'm going to sit on the sidelines. I want conservative. I'm going to buy a bond, or I'm going to go out and buy a CD. Where these interest rates are now, you're going to go broke slowly.
Yeah. And in this industry, we talk about, should we be conservative or aggressive? And I mean, we're sitting here talking about, as women, what do we do with our lives, and how do we start now? But it's ironic, in my opinion, to call it aggressive, because we're not maybe supposed to be aggressive as females. Yet, to be growth focused is really important. So just even changing that mindset, again, it always comes back to mindset, right? But if we change that mindset of, I need to be growth focused and understand just enough to be comfortable with the highs and lows when the news is saying that the market is crashing and I'm 30, 40, 50 years old and I have a lot of time, hopefully. But just in case, I've got the magic of compound, and I want the best retirement, the best future that I can have and create. But if the worst case happens, I'm also prepared for that,
right,
in the best way I can possibly be.
And that's where it's important to make sure that you are working with somebody, because we talk about 5 broad categories of risk when we're investing, right? But you don't want to go all in one category. Somebody, when we talk to people, we ask, and it's my favorite thing to do when we talk about the different categories, and we ask, the spouses, where do you think you fit in? And 90% of the time, the husband's like, oh, I'm right here on aggressive. And the wife's
super
like,
aggressive.
I'm a little more conservative. But you can be sacrificing, again, the money being left on the table by thinking that you need to be just in one area or the other.
Yeah. I like to say that risk and return are two sides of the same coin. They have to be discussed at the same time, because if one goes into a menu of funds, for example, in 401ks, they usually just label it per the risk level.
Right.
When they don't think about the individual who might be less than educated about their retirement or investments, rather, they look at the risk and they're not thinking that means return. It's the risk and return together that we have to always think about.
Oh, 100%.
And going back to what you said, Marty, about compound interest, it's not enough to be a great saver.
Right.
It isn't, because how many great savers have we met who are still short for retirement? I every time think of a particular lady that was an excellent saver, a government employee that had a TSP, saved an excellent percentage of her income her entire 40-year career. But that amounted to, $400,000, $500,000 at the time, because it was sitting in essentially
The G
cash.
funds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, wait.
The G funds.
Let's talk about this for a second, because this leads
as
to
opposed to 1.3 million.
Yes.
Right. If it had simply been invested, if there had been someone like watching that for her to
Right.
say, hey, let's make one small change.
Yeah. And this is going to be another episode. I think it is maybe episode 4, where we talk about 401ks, and when Blair says TSP, that's the thrift savings plan, government or federal employees sometimes, right? And it's amazing, though, because like you, nothing hurt my heart more than when I first got into this industry. I'm working specifically with military families, again, creating wealth and not chasing it, but I'd have someone about to retire from their military career, so pumped and proud that they contribute their whole time to the TSP. And I get their statement, and it's in the G fund. And the G fund is literally like a savings account.
Yeah.
It's
It doesn't
guaranteed.
have
And it's
compound
also
interest.
the default.
I don't think it is anymore.
Well, good.
Yeah. No, now they have a Roth option, all this, but
Yes.
but that'll be a future episode where we dig in deeper for that. But you're right. So the checklist today about longevity is start now.
Yeah.
Right?
And don't be afraid. So when people hear that the stock market's crashing, it's either the NASDAQ, the Dow, or the S&P. There are so many more indexes out there that might not be crashing. So if you are in index funds, or you're in a mutual fund type situation, or just in an all ETF strategy, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But when you hear something's crashing, don't automatically assume that your asset allocation is being as affected.
Not to mention that the market itself, the stock market, works in cycles. So a bull market, which is a strong, longer market, usually lasts, 3 to 7 years. Then the next cycle is a bear market, where it drops around negative 20% or more, which sounds scary, and it's not comfortable, and it's not supposed to be, but that lasts about 18 months on average. Right. So you have these long, strong periods to make up for that time, and you just have to bear. And it doesn't mean, again, back to your point, Marty, if the S&P 500, which is on the news, is down negative 20% or more, that doesn't mean your portfolio is. But the news isn't going to tell you that, and your friends aren't going to tell you that.
And the news also is going to use like the verbiage Marty used, the word crashing, right? It's called appreciation and depreciation. The value goes up and down, right? But the news is always going to, it's tanking. Oh, investors are taking a bath. Investors lost their shirt.
And the only time we're losing is if we're liquidating.
Exactly.
We're not losing. And
If
so
you
if we're
realize that
35
loss.
years old and we're hearing that the stock market crashed and we're, panicking and taking our money out, that's when we lose. Otherwise, why do we even care? Unless we are on the doorstep of retiring in the next 1 to 2 years, it should be irrelevant.
Yeah, and then folks
And so
wait.
that's the behavioral aspect.
Exactly. Folks wait for the coast to be clear to get out because it's scary, only for the market to go up before they want to get back in. And that is where they lock in permanent losses that can never be made up for.
So what we try to teach clients is you got to take the emotion out, which is really, really hard to do because you're watching your money fluctuate, right? So, and that's where it's important, working with a fiduciary, and we can't stress that enough. Here are the portfolios that we have. They're all managed in-house, so there truly are people that are sitting there every single day reevaluating the stocks that we own, making sure that they still hold their water. Just because a stock price depreciates doesn't mean it's time to sell a company. We look at the fundamentals, why, what are the forward-looking projections? So we're going to manage that for our clients, and we're going to talk you through it, right? So that you can really understand why we're doing what we're doing. Being smart about what you own is key to the compounding, the growth of your portfolios, shaving off earnings, reducing your risk. It has to be massaged. It's like we keep saying, it's
Who
living
doesn't like a massage
and breathing.
once in a while?
I would like to have a massage, not a bath. No baths in the market for us, thanks.
I like how you mentioned, I've heard you say that before, take the emotion out of investing.
Yes.
And I say it slightly differently, which is that it's impossible to take the emotion out of investing. So that's why you depend on us to do that for you or to help manage that with you.
Right.
Because I hear a lot of the times from men, I only make logical decisions. I don't make decisions based on emotion. Well, they're just less in touch with the fact that their emotions really are driving their decision-making process. And then we tend to verify our decisions or justify them with logic. So we all have emotions. We're all humans. We all have emotions.
We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to give you some tips on how to create that longevity.
Welcome to We Are Augusta, where we empower women with wisdom, dignity, and clarity. It's reality. Not only are we living longer, but we're also responsible for spending every dollar, and we're alone much longer. So when we reflect, ladies, what's one tip that you would give your younger self, now knowing and witnessing so many situations where the women are living longer, oftentimes alone, and having to be responsible for those extended caregiving expenses?
Yeah. I would begin with seek a mentor or someone that you trust if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, and don't wait until you're forced to get involved in your own financial situation. Eventually, illness, death, divorce, for some women, they don't get involved early enough. Simply checking account balances on a regular basis, knowing where to find your statements. Simple things like that make a really big difference in knowing where you stand to begin with.
So plan for the life that you want. Plan for health. Plan for vacations, travel, the things that you're passionate about. Maybe a relationship, because I don't have one. And if you reach for the moon, and if we only get to the stars, I'm going to call that successful too.
I love that answer, to plan for what you want and not just what you hear about
Right.
what you should want.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
I think for a lot of folks, they always think that's traveling. I just want to throw that out there because sometimes people are so busy, if they're still in their accumulation in their working years, they're not thinking about what they're going to do with their time once they do retire. So it's not just the traveling, which is everyone fills the blank in how they want there, but it's what activities do you want to do? Is it ballroom dancing? Did you want to learn did you want to join a choir, a chorus and sing? Or
Marty would like to learn how to
Volunteer.
crochet.
Clearly
And,
I'd like to learn how to crochet.
So I think you definitely need to make some room for that. But
I know we're throwing a bunch, we're throwing a lot of information out here, and I'm sure there are people who feel just overwhelmed. They're like, oh my gosh, and it's really easy to shut down when we start throwing so many things out there at you. So if you don't do anything, maybe just do one little start. You have to start somewhere. And so this is what I say to some of my younger clients. Maybe let's say that you go to Starbucks 4 or 5 times a week. Maybe go 3 or 4 times a week and take that extra $7 or $10 or whatever you're spending and save it. Go out, open up an account, and buy an ETF. Buy the S&P 500. Go buy SPY or VOO. That's an ETF for the S&P 500, and you can buy it with $7. And keep consistently putting that $7 in there every single week. And every time you go to Starbucks, or the time that you're not going to go to Starbucks, throw that $7 in there, and you'll see the power of compounding returns. And maybe once you can see that happening, you'll decide, I really want to do this a little bit more. And it was really easy to save that $7. Let's do it again. Or maybe there's $20, and then next thing you know, you're up to $100 a month.
And that's the key.
Investing in yourself.
Investing in yourself.
Right.
And when you realize that, it feels damn good.
See the growth and also realize how much you're spending at Starbucks.
Or Dutch Brothers.
Wow.
Or who else
That's
is out
another
there?
episode, Blair,
Einstein
where we're
bagels.
leaking money. That's coming up as well.
Leaking.
But you're right. Like,
I
we
love
do.
what you said about calling a mentor. Because sometimes that conversation can be scary, but if maybe you call a relative, because you'll find how big of a shift it was. I remember when my mom first retired, and I always saw her out the door, ready to go. And I remember her sitting on the couch watching me then go out the door for high school and thinking, this is so strange to see her sitting there like twiddling her thumbs, like, because she was
take up
always go,
crocheting.
go. Yeah. Well, maybe. Yeah. But so what you said is so real about it being really scary and not knowing what to do, even though we have all these grandiose plans
Right.
of what we'll do when we get there.
Yeah. And it's a paradox of choice. I remember reading this book, early in my professional career, probably in my 20s, a long, long time ago. But it was this paradox of choice. The example was this guy walks into the Gap store, just wants to buy a pair of jeans. This was when Gap was cool, right? Okay.
But was it?
Okay, so Marty and I will have a sidebar at the next commercial break. But Gap was cool. It was at the nice mall, not the not so nice mall, right? There's 2 different malls. Anyway, so paradox of choice. He wants a pair of jeans. He walks into the Gap and he sees straight leg, boot cut, all these like boyfriend. Skinny, right? Even back then, right? And he was like, well, forget this. There's too many choices. And he walks out with no jeans. And the key is, the fear that I have at times is that there's so much information out there. Choosing the right mentor, like you mentioned, choosing the right ETF. What is an ETF, right? Like all those type of things. Walk into a fiduciary. Take that step. Just one thing at a time.
Yeah. Don't be overwhelmed. And if it is, just take it back to basics.
Back to
Do
basics.
One little thing. So there's a saying about 1% better, right? If you can be 1% better every week or every month, start on a small scale, whatever that 1% looks like for you, by the end of the year, now you're 12% better, right? or by the end of the month, you're 4% better. So find one little step to take and do it.
If your self-improvement is a compounding returns,
There you go.
You have more than 12%.
You will
a year.
have more than 12%.
I like it. I like it. Nice
Good call,
one.
Jen. You were listening.
And I guess to answer that question of the younger self, I would say my advice is to understand your benefits and your retirement plans and how they work now. Even if you don't have an advisor you're working with, just the bare minimum of picking up the phone and calling HR will get you enough of the way there to be involved and to really show up at the table. What we were going off of before, just an example of that would be with the TSP. We all know that they give that 5% match. So making sure you're scooping up that free 5% of your salary. If you're making $100,000 a year, that could be $5,000 that your employer's just giving you. So we don't want to miss out on things like that. Right. So if I could go back to my younger self, which I like to think I'm still very young. You are. You are. That's what I would say. But then again, I had my dad to say, 12%.
Yeah.
Sign up at 12%, pre-tax.
Yeah. Calm down, Dad.
He didn't know about Roths.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And you keep talking about, when we're talking about mentors, finding a mentor, when you're on that search, you need to find, anyone can manage money, right? No, we say that anyone can manage money. It's going to be about the relationship that you develop with that person that you're going to. Right. Interview them, come with questions, and pay attention to how they answer. Are they answering your questions first and foremost? Are you satisfied with the answer they're giving? Are they just telling stories, or do they look good on the outside, right? Do they have the details? You're looking at the details of the office, and I live by the devil is in the details. People usually notice what's wrong. They don't always notice what's right? Because what's right is not out of place, but what's wrong is out of place. And if there's something in your gut that's like, doesn't feel, don't do it. Don't go with them. They need to be trustworthy and honest, and are they approachable? Do you believe what they're saying? Do they engage you? Do they look you in the eye?
Right.
Do they even talk to you?
I was going to say, do they even ask about you, or are they just too busy talking about themselves and why they're so great and what they can do?
Listening to respond or listening to hear?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
That's why I think, going back to our previous episode, why a lot of ladies have that leading with apology is because they've been dealing with someone who isn't approachable and doesn't connect with them or ask them genuine questions and then listen. So that relationship aspect is crucial.
It is. Or are they returning your phone call? Are they returning your email? Or once they got your money, do they fall off the face of the earth?
That's amazing. Yeah. That's a good one.
That's when the planning starts. So this is something that I clung to. I met with a client in our Huntsville office, and this was a few weeks ago. And we're constantly learning. And he said to me, I felt like I outgrew them because they're just investing. Right? They're just investing. And so there is a difference between investing and managing. Huge difference. And he put that in perspective for me just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, investing alone is worthless without being in the context of financial planning or managing the multifaceted aspect of your financial life, and with that long time horizon in mind.
And it's every aspect of your financial world. It's not just the money I'm saving. It's, hey, I want to buy a car and I'm going to pay cash. I'm paying cash for this car. Well, if they have 0% financing and you have really great credit, why are you going to get rid of that cash that you can be growing and go buy a depreciable asset?
And why is that? We know the answer because we were all raised at some point to go, debt is bad, right? I cannot carry the debt. And so it's a fine line of, even with retirees, I have X amount left on the mortgage. Do I pay this off? But at the end of the day, that's why it's not just a black and white conversation. It's how deep is that emotion of carrying the debt?
Absolutely.
Right? Because if that is going to keep you up at night, it might not be worth it. But we also, from a financial standpoint and from that not emotional standpoint, might say, hey, it's better to keep the mortgage at that rate and do other things with it. Don't buy that car in cash, even though you have it. Great job on having the cash.
Yeah.
Debt.
Let's grow it.
Like, rich people use debt in a very strategic manner.
But I don't want you to think you have to be wealthy to do that. You don't
Great
have to
point.
be rich to use money. So when we start talking, I started as a tax advisor 25, however many years. I'm only 34. 20 some years ago, and taxes. The tax code was written for everyone. It was not written just for the wealthy. So you need to have a partner with taxes who can interpret code for you and your personal situation. So now you're back to the person, you're the average millionaire. Those people who are millionaires did not earn six figures. It's people who saved and invested in themselves. So now we've got the saver who's like, I'm going to buy a new car. I've saved up the $30,000. Average Joe, they might not have had the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with someone about how money really does work, or even realize that 0% financing, if we can grow your account 10% per year, why wouldn't you take that 10% on that $30,000 and make that car payment with that money? And now the car's paid off and you have more money than where you started.
Yeah.
You have a little bit more wealth.
Yeah, absolutely. A quick example, a client you made me think of, she was a school teacher and she never made more than $30,000 a year. I think school teachers make more than that these days.
They do.
But yeah, she retired in the 90s, right? So, but when I worked with her, she had $2 million and she never made more than $30,000 a year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very
And that's the
achievable.
power of compounding.
Yeah.
We're going to beat that dead horse.
And how often lately, just after the pandemic, have we all been getting the question of, should I pay off the mortgage? I have, less than 50,000 left, or, what should I be doing with this extra cash flow? Lately, that question has been really coming through, and all of the individuals asking typically have a great interest rate that they refinanced at during COVID, and are still considering paying down that mortgage simply because of not wanting to have a mortgage. And this sounds extreme, but my theory is you can die with that mortgage.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah. That's good debt.
Yeah.
It's not bad
Best
debt.
debt you can have.
Yeah. But I always say that, but I always give them like a double answer because this is the textbook answer, right? This is the kind of black and white information, but we're all human. And if for you, it just gives you that sleep at night factor, it gives you this, you have this itch that you just really want to scratch and you just want to get rid of it. Especially if your mortgage is lower. I mean, if the balance remaining is low enough to where you can just kind of pay it off in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
If that helps you sleep at night, then great. But I gave you the information, and now you're going to have to make the most informed decision with which path you want to take.
Yeah.
Empower and educate.
But the thing to remember, when you're getting towards the end of your mortgage, you're not paying interest anymore anyway because they're all front loaded.
Exactly.
You've paid all the interest. They're
Right.
all front loaded. You've already swallowed that pill.
So what's the rush? It's
So
the same
why are you in
concept
rush?
as the car.
Why are you
It's 0%
spending your cash
interest.
just to pay off the mortgage?
Yeah.
I like to throw the salt on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cut it open. And
Even though this is a judgment-free zone. This is a judgment-free zone.
we still judge.
Maybe behind the scenes just a little bit. No, and the reality is, again, there's no cookie cutter. I love it when you said that, Blair. There's no cookie cutter, and every answer might be different for the individual.
We'll be right back after this break.
Okay, I would love to finish with a helpful checklist. What are the steps women should take now so their money lasts as long as they do in our real lives?
Well, one thing that I get super jazzed about are health savings accounts, HSAs, not an FSA, and not the HSA that your parents or, mentors who are a bit older than you are likely familiar with, the new HSA. And I like to refer to that as the triple tax trifecta, because it is the only place, the only vehicle that you can put money in on a pre-tax basis. So you're getting that tax deduction. You're getting tax-deferred growth. So make sure those dollars are invested and not just sitting in cash. And then you're able to take them out tax-free in retirement. So this is better than a Roth IRA. It's better than a traditional IRA. There's no other vehicle that allows these tax advantages currently. Now, whenever we have something this great, the IRS tends to limit it. So at 55 instead of 50, you're able to make an extra $1,000 catch-up contribution. What's the eligibility for an HSA? Making sure you're enrolled in a high deductible health plan. That's it. And then you can start one. You don't have to wait on your employer to tell you where. You can literally HSA Bank, Health Equity, not endorsing any of these, but there's a handful of them that you can just go out and start your own HSA at any location online and start funding it. The amount that you can fund is limited. Again, anything really good for us tends to get the boot. But I highly recommend doing that, and especially for those young professionals. And those are the ones that often neglect it because they're thinking, well, I don't have any health concerns right now. Why would I do this health savings account? I'll just put all my money in the 401k instead. But especially for them. And if they max that out each year, which is only, $100 and something per pay period, about $300 and something a month, somewhere between $300 and $400. If you do that habitually, you will end up with over $250,000 tax-free for healthcare expenses in your retirement that you're going to have expenses at that point. We don't know when, but you will have those expenses. And the last piece that I get so excited about with HSAs is that at 65, there's no longer a 20% penalty for accessing those assets for non-medical health expenses. So now you have this vehicle where it is taxed. It doesn't come tax-free for those non-medical expenses. But after 65, they loosen the rules. So the last thing I'll say there is an HSA, you think, well, but again, I don't have any health expenses right now. Or I do my annual women's wellness exam and that's it. But you will. You will not get out of here unless you are that 1%. And when I say out of here, I mean the world. None of us are immortal. And so you're not getting out of here.
Okay, we need a moment for Marty.
Without that moment. And when that moment comes, you have this tax-free vehicle to fund it all. So
It's fabulous.
Yeah.
I love seeing you get jazzed.
I love
know.
HSAs.
It just shows we are complete nerds. We're all excited watching you. We're like,
And not,
it's so great.
not closet nerds.
Yeah.
We're just going to own it.
Yeah.
We're going to own it and hope that you benefit from it.
Yeah, and it's from working with people and then also going through life yourself where no one maybe explained that to us when we were younger. Mm-hmm. I had the same thought when I was younger, and now I have my HSA, and I used it to myself and my one kiddo have braces, and then the husband and the other kiddo both have glasses, and that's an ongoing thing. Really, it's not cheap. I love that I have this side money that it doesn't have to come out of our family living expenses. We don't have to forsake anything in our lifestyle to make sure that those needs are met. It's just fantastic.
I appreciate that. And there's one other thing, though, with that in mind. If you have the cash flow to pay for the Band-Aids or the women's supplies, because you can use your HSA for that, by the way. But if you have the out-of-pocket to use for those type of smaller expenses, I do recommend not using your HSA for that. Allow it to be that sole vehicle that exists to get that tax-deferred growth and keep those dollars invested. Because if we're using it for everything, we don't have $250,000 tax-free for our healthcare expenses in retirement. So I recommend it as, the philosophy there is invest, set up the automatic payroll deduction, make sure you have it invested. We will help you log onto that account and make sure the dollars are invested if you don't know how to invest them.
Versus it just sitting in cash.
Versus it sitting in cash.
Just because that's the default, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that's how they were meant to be used. Just sitting in cash. And that's why I said it's important to have these conversations because the new way of approaching them is utilizing them as an investment vehicle.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna do big scope, and come back to that one aspect that we spoke about earlier as far as Medicaid is concerned, because at some point, if you need long-term care and you don't have a plan for it, you're gonna have to turn to the state, and the state is gonna come in and seize assets, and they don't care whose assets they are. Household assets are household assets, even if you've kept them separate. And you don't join, you don't have, the traditional, we commingled our assets, we spoke about the husband and wife individual financial plans, and then they have a joint account. At that point in time, the state's going to step in and seize assets so that they can pay for your long-term care. So plan for something catastrophic as well.
I'm going to ask a silly question on that. If the investments or the house, some of the assets are under a trust, Marty, are they protected?
No,
Thank you.
they are not. A trust. That's another episode. Let's not get into that.
Okay.
We'll do an episode. We can do an episode on trust planning alone.
Yeah.
There are so many nuances, so we'll save it for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you say catastrophic too, I think that might be helpful for our friends to define what that means from a financial perspective, because at first glance, catastrophic might mean something like getting hit by a bus. That's not catastrophic in the sense of the financial plan, right? It's more like something that's expensive and long-lasting.
Or is it, depending on your injuries that you sustained?
If it doesn't wipe you out in one fell swoop.
Right. If it was a tap, tap, tappy tap, and you just kind of fell on the ground, it might not be catastrophic. Or you would get a really good lawsuit settlement out of it, potentially, then we'll help you with that too. But there are risks that you might not think would have a financial impact that actually do. Right? Everything pretty much can have a financial impact.
We're not saying plan for it all. We're just saying
No.
plan. Get
Educate.
going. Educate.
And just educate.
Today, you heard how living longer changes not just our lives, but our finances. What steps you can take to protect yourself by asking questions is a strength, and how dignity in money starts with honesty. For more, reach out at weareaugustathepodcast.com or to our partners at trajanwealth.com. Share the episode, and until next time, stay aware, stick together, and remember, like you, we are powerful. Like you, we are strong. And like you, we are
Augusta.